I still remember the morning we received the orders. We were just finishing breakfast when Captain Hayes walked into the tent with a file in his hand. He didn't say a word at first, just placed the folder on the table and stared at all of us. Everyone went quiet. That wasn't normal for him. Hayes never hesitated, never looked unsure. But that day, his eyes were different, uneasy, like even he didn't want to read what was inside that file. Finally, he spoke. His voice was low. Tired. Listen up. A platoon went missing last night. 38 men. No radio, no flare, no bodies. We stared at him. A platoon? 38 men don't just vanish without a fight. He opened the file. There were photos inside. Not of bodies, but of empty trenches, rifles lying on the ground, boots still lined up neatly outside tents. No signs of blood. No signs of struggle. Just gone. We thought maybe it was desertion, but Hayes shook his head slowly. They left their food untouched. They left their ammo. They left their boots by the fire. Nobody moves barefoot in a forest in the middle of winter. That's when he showed us the last photo, a blurry silhouette standing in the trees. Tall, thin, wrong. It looked like a soldier, but the proportions were off. Arms too long, head tilted unnaturally, like it wasn't used to wearing a human shape. Captain Hayes slammed the folder shut. We're going in. We're bringing those men back. But I swear, in that moment, every single one of us knew one thing. We weren't going in to save anyone. We were going in to join them. We left at dawn. The sun hadn't fully risen yet, and everything was covered in a thin layer of frost. Our boots crunched on the frozen ground as we marched toward the one place every soldier was told never to enter alone. The Black Forest. They called it black not because of the trees, but because of what the darkness did to people who walked inside. As soon as we stepped past the old rusted sign, the air changed. The temperature dropped instantly, almost like we had walked into a giant freezer. And something else, something none of us said out loud. The forest was dead quiet. No birds, no cracking branches, no wind. Even our footsteps sounded muffled, like the ground was swallowing the sound. Sergeant Miller stopped and looked around. He frowned. Why is it so quiet? Nobody answered. Nobody had to. We all felt it. An unnatural stillness. The kind that makes you feel watched. The deeper we walked, the colder it got. Our breaths fogged heavily, even though it wasn't cold enough for that outside the forest. Private Lewis pointed at a nearby tree. It had symbols carved into the bark, sharp, uneven lines, not letters, not drawings, just shapes that didn't look human-made. Then we saw the next tree, same symbols. And then the next, and the next. Hundreds of them, circling us like silent warnings. Hayes whispered, "These weren't in the recon photos." He seemed confused. But we weren't confused. We were scared. Because the symbols looked fresh, as if carved last night, or worse, as if they were carving themselves. After about an hour of marching, we reached the point where the missing platoon was last seen. There were footprints everywhere, but not normal ones. They were arranged in a full circle, as if the soldiers had been surrounding someone or something in the middle. But the center of the circle was empty. No signs of a struggle. No blood. Nothing. Just dead leaves and silent trees. Before anyone could speak, a sudden gust of cold air hit us. Not wind. This felt like someone exhaling right behind our necks. Every hair on my arm stood straight up. And that's when I noticed something. My own breath. It wasn't just fogging. It was drifting in a direction, being pulled deeper into the forest. Like the forest itself was inhaling. Hayes finally said the words we were all trying not to think. Guns up. No one falls behind. This place isn't normal. And with that, we took our first steps deeper into the forest. Into a place where 38 men vanished without a trace. Into a place that didn't want us to leave. Into a place that felt alive. We didn't know it yet, but the forest had already marked us, and it wasn't planning on giving us back. And then we saw it. A silhouette, a human shape, stepping into view. But the outline was wrong. Too tall, too thin. The limbs slightly bent at angles humans couldn't bend. "Please, help! I'm trapped! Someone!" The voice came from its mouth, but the lips didn't move. It stood there, watching us, or at least facing us, its head tilting ever so slowly. like it was studying us back. No one fired. We couldn't. Not because of fear, but because our bodies wouldn't move. All of us were frozen in place. The figure took a single step forward. The ground shook lightly. Its footfall wasn't normal. It was too heavy. Like whatever it was weighed far more than its thin frame suggested. That single step snapped us out of the paralysis. "Fall back!" Miller shouted. We retreated fast, rifles up, but the figure didn't chase. It just stood there, still tilted, still watching. And then, just before it faded back into the darkness, it whispered something new, different from before, a sentence that made my blood go cold. "You're next." And then, the forest went silent again, but none of us slept after that. Because we realized something horrifying. The missing platoon hadn't just disappeared. They were taken, and whatever took them was now watching us. We set up camp before sunset, not because we were tired, but because none of us wanted to be moving once the forest turned pitch black. Out here, the darkness didn't feel normal. It felt thick, like it had weight, like it pressed against your skin. Sergeant Miller ordered perimeter checks. Hayes and I walked the east side. The trees there were spaced strangely, evenly, almost like someone had planted them in perfect lines. Each trunk had those same carved symbols, fresh, sharp, and somehow colder than the bark around them. "I swear these weren't this deep when we passed earlier," Hayes muttered. He was right. The carvings looked deeper, like they had been carved again. As the last bit of sunlight disappeared, everything shifted. The temperature dropped. Not by a little. By a lot. I could see my breath pouring out like smoke. The air felt heavy, pressing down on my chest. That's when the forest made its first sound of the entire day. A crack, not a twig. A whole branch, snapping somewhere far ahead of us. Hayes raised his rifle instantly. "Did you hear that?" I nodded. But what made my stomach twist wasn't the branch breaking. It was the echo. The echo didn't behave like an echo. It bounced in every direction, circling us, like something was running around us at impossible speed. We returned to camp quickly. The others were already on edge. No one talked. We just sat in a circle, staring at the darkness between the trees, listening for anything. The forest felt like it was breathing again. Slow, steady, inhaling, exhaling. Around 1:10 a.m., Lewis shook me awake. "I heard something," he whispered. It wasn't an animal. We stepped out of the tent. Everyone else was awake too. No one had slept. Not after the sound we all heard. From deep inside the woods, a voice, a human voice, calling for help. "Please, help! I'm trapped! Someone!" It sounded exactly like a young soldier, weak, desperate. But there was something wrong. The tone didn't rise or fall normally. It was too flat, too steady, like someone was imitating a voice they didn't fully understand. Miller whispered, "Hold positions, don't move toward it." But the voice kept calling, repeating the same sentence, the exact same way, like a recording stuck on loop. "Please, help! I'm trapped! Someone!" Hayes slowly shook his head. "That's not a person." None of us knew how he could be so sure. But he was right. Something in the sound. It didn't feel alive. Then, footsteps. Slow, heavy, walking toward us from the exact direction the voice was coming from. We raised our rifles. The footsteps got closer. Then they stopped. Just out of sight behind a wall of trees. Silence. None of us talked the next morning. Not while packing. Not while eating. Not even while checking gear. We all kept glancing toward the part of the forest where that thing stood last night. As if it would reappear the moment we turned our backs. The air felt heavier that morning. Colder. The sunlight barely broke through the tall black trees. Everything around us looked washed out, like the forest was draining color from anything that entered it. We moved in a tight formation, rifles ready, stepping carefully through the thick leaves and tangled roots. Every sound made us jump. Every shadow looked alive. About an hour into the march, Lewis stopped. "Guys, you need to see this!" We gathered around him. In front of us was a trench. Long, deep, stretching into the distance like a scar across the forest floor. It wasn't on the map. No one had mentioned any fortifications here. The trench walls were covered in scratch marks. Hundreds of them. Deep, desperate claw-like gouges. as if people had been trying to climb out or trying to get away from something inside. Hayes swallowed hard. This looks recent, way too recent for World War II. He was right. The soil was fresh, moist, disturbed only days ago. Miller ordered us to move along the trench line carefully. We followed it, step by step, all the way to its deepest point, and that's where we heard it. A faint scream. At first it sounded far away, like a memory echoing through the trees. Then it grew louder. A raw, agonizing scream, the kind a person makes when they know they're about to die. Then another scream. Then another. Different voices. Men, all screaming at once, like dozens of soldiers trapped underground. Lewis backed away. There's no one in there, right? Tell me there's no one down there. But there was something moving in the trench, deep in the shadows. We aimed our rifles. The movement grew closer, crawling, dragging, as if something was clawing its way toward us. Then, silence. Not even breathing. The forest held its breath again, and slowly, something rose up from the bottom of the trench. A helmet. An American Weight II helmet. Rusty, dented, covered in soil. Then a hand appeared. Skin stretched thin over bone. Fingers cracked and blackened like they had been buried for days. It pulled itself a little higher, and that's when we saw the face, or what was left of it. A soldier, but not alive, not dead either. His eyes were clouded white, his jaw crooked, his skin dry and torn as if the forest itself had drained him of life. His mouth opened, too wide, and a scream burst out that wasn't human. Not pain, not fear, a warning. Run! The voice wasn't from his mouth. It came from the trench itself, echoing from below, from dozens of buried throats. We stepped back immediately, rifles shaking. Behind the soldier's corpse-like body, more hands started rising. Dozens. Reaching up the walls, some grabbing blindly, some clawing at the soil, some dragging themselves upward, slowly, painfully. Miller shouted, "Back, now!" We retreated fast, but the sound from the trench grew louder. Screams, whispers, voices calling names none of us recognized. And then, a different sound. A low, deep growl, coming from somewhere far below the trench, so deep it shook the ground beneath our boots. Whatever was down there, it wasn't human. And the soldiers weren't trying to escape it. They were trying to get away from it. We backed up until we were far from the trench's edge. The hands slowly sank back into the darkness. The screams faded. The soil stilled. But the last thing we heard, just before everything went silent, was a whisper drifting up from the trench's depths. You can't leave. It's already inside you. We didn't stop moving after the screaming trench. No one even suggested resting. Every one of us felt the same thing, that the forest was tightening around us. Like a trap slowly closing, by midday the fog had returned. Thick, cold. It curled along the ground in long white streams wrapping around our boots like fingers. Hayes kept glancing behind us. Something's following, he whispered. Whatever was in that trench, it's not staying there. He wasn't wrong. All morning, we heard faint footsteps behind us. Not close, but not far. Just following, matching our pace. Then, through the fog, Miller spotted something made of metal. Tall, rigid, out of place. A bunker. A concrete WWII bunker half sunk into the earth, moss covering most of its walls. The steel door was slightly open, bent outward, as if something had forced its way out, not in. Lewis muttered, "This wasn't on any map either. What the hell happened here?" We approached slowly. As we got closer, the smell hit us. Damp, metallic, the faint scent of rust and old blood mixed together. Miller raised his hand. "No one makes a sound. Weapons ready." We stepped inside. Immediately, the temperature dropped. My breath fogged out in front of me like smoke. The air was heavy. Still, like it hadn't been disturbed in decades. The bunker walls were covered in scratch marks, the same symbols carved into the trees. Only these were deeper, angrier, like someone had carved them in panic. Hayes ran his fingers over one. It's the same pattern, same angle, same spacing. Whoever carved these wasn't human. We moved deeper into the bunker. The first room was empty. Just old crates, rotted uniforms, and a single table flipped onto its side. But the second room, that's where we found them. 7 American soldiers. Not alive, Not decomposed either. Their bodies were lined up against the wall, neatly, almost respectfully. Their eyes were open, staring blankly upward, their mouths slightly parted. But the worst part? Their chests were rising and falling, slowly, as if they were breathing. Lewis froze. No, 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 that's not possible. Miller whispered, "Don't touch them. Don't go near." As we examined the room, something else became clear. The soldiers' dog tags were missing, every single one, like someone had taken the identity, but left the body behind. Hayes pointed to the corner. Look, a radio, old, dust-covered, but still plugged into the wall, somehow. Then, it turned on. By itself, static hissed through the bunker. Then a voice, weak, trembling, familiar. A soldier. "Is anyone there? Please respond. We're trapped. It's coming back. Please!" The voice cut off suddenly, followed by a long, slow exhale. Not human, not mechanical, something breathing into the microphone. Then something spoke through the radio, a deep, layered voice, like multiple voices speaking at once. They all belong to us. And now, you do too. The radio shut off instantly. Every soldier in the bunker, the ones lying against the wall, opened their eyes wider. All at once, their heads turned toward us in perfect sync, not slowly, not naturally, snapping. Lewis screamed, stumbling backward. The soldiers' mouths opened, wider and wider, far wider than human jaws were meant to open. A low hum began, vibrating the walls, shaking the floor. Building, growing, intensifying. Miller yelled, "Out, now!" We ran, harder than we had ever run. The humming followed us, echoing through the bunker, chasing us down the hall, vibrating inside our chest cavities. As we burst through the bunker door, the humming stopped instantly. The forest went silent. But just before the door swung shut behind us, I heard one final whisper from inside the bunker. "You can't run far. You're already marked, and it's almost awake." After escaping the bunker, none of us spoke. The forest seemed alive. Every shadow moved differently than it should have. Every rustle in the trees felt like fingers brushing our faces. The fog returned that afternoon, thick, white, curling around our boots and rifles. It wasn't just mist, it felt purposeful, like it had a mind, like it wanted to trap us. Hayes signaled us to slow down. "No running," he said quietly. "But stay alert. Don't let it surround you." We followed him. Every step felt like walking through molasses. The fog wasn't random. It moved along with us, sometimes ahead, sometimes circling behind, always closing in. Then we heard it. Whispers. Soft at first, almost polite, but unmistakable, calling out our names. "Private Lewis. Sergeant Miller. Hayes, come closer." Every name perfectly clear. Even names of soldiers who weren't with us. Names none of us recognized. I tried to shake it off. This is the forest playing tricks," I whispered to myself. But it wasn't the forest. It was something else. The whispers began to form words we couldn't understand. Syllables that sounded human but weren't. Soft, layered, almost like dozens of voices speaking at once. Then Lewis froze. Did you hear that?" We all did. A figure appeared. Tall, thin, blending perfectly with the fog. Its head tilted unnaturally. Its limbs too long, moving in jerky wrong ways. Its face, blank, no eyes, no mouth. Just smooth, pale, wrong. The whispering got louder, coming from the figure, echoing around us, inside our own heads. "You shouldn't have come. It's too late." We tried to keep moving, but the fog seemed alive. Branches reached out, brushing against our arm, grabbing our coats. Footsteps echoed behind us, matching ours exactly, then stopping when we stopped. Hayes whispered, "We need to find shelter before night." The forest didn't agree. Suddenly I felt it. A hand, cold, icy, wrap around my ankle. I stumbled forward. Nothing was there. But when I looked back, the figure was closer, and more of them appeared, stepping out of the fog silently. More shapes, taller, thinner, wrong. Some crawling, some sliding, some floating just above the ground. Miller yelled, "Run!" We ran blindly. Branches tore at our faces. The fog clawed at our boots. The whispers became a chant, dozens of voices now speaking in unison. "They're coming! You can't escape. You're already ours. And then, just for a moment, silence. We slowed, panting, hoping, praying that the forest had lost interest. But Hayes noticed something in the distance. A clearing, not bright, not safe, but solid. The fog thinned there, forming a small path. We ran toward it, hoping it led out, not knowing if it was salvation or another trap. Something moved in the fog, just for a second. A flash of pale skin, 2 long arms, head tilting, watching us as we ran. The forest was alive, and it had us marked. We stumbled into the clearing, gasping for air, hearts pounding. For a brief moment, it felt like we had escaped the fog. Like maybe, just maybe, we could catch our breath. But then Lewis froze. "Guys, look," he whispered. A body lay in the snow. At first, we thought it was a fallen tree branch covered in frost. But the shape, unmistakably human. We approached cautiously. It was a soldier. American. Uniform tattered, helmet cracked. Face pale, eyes wide open, staring blankly. Mouth frozen mid-scream. But something was wrong. His skin wasn't right. Grayish. Shiny in some places, cracked in others. Like he had been frozen in the snow for weeks. Maybe months. But his body looked fresh. Fresh enough that we could almost hear him breathing. I swallowed hard. "He's alive?" I whispered. Miller shook his head. "No, not alive, not dead, something in between." As we stood there trying to understand, we noticed the hands. Clawed, bent fingers digging into the snow. Scratches on the nearby trees. Fresh marks leading toward the deeper forest. Then we heard it. A whisper, low, raspy, coming from behind the trees. "Follow, follow, follow." We spun around, rifles ready, but there was nothing. Just the snow falling from the trees, silent. Lewis stepped closer to the body. I think he's the first of them," he said. "Maybe the missing platoon, some of them." Miller grabbed his shoulder. "Don't touch him, we don't know what this is." The whisper came again, clearer this time, calling Lewis by name. Then movement. The body. It twitched. Fingers curling. Head turning slightly. Just enough that the white, lifeless eyes met ours. Hayes shouted, "Run!" We bolted. Through snow, over fallen trees, the fog creeping from behind, whispering our names. The same way it had with the trench. I dared a glance back. The body. It was following us. Not walking. Sliding across the snow. Moving faster than it should have been able to. And then, more shapes appeared. Bodies. American soldiers. Rotting. Gray. Wrong. All coming from the forest edges. Some crawling, some sliding, some walking upright. All staring at us with hollow, empty eyes. The whispering grew louder. Not one voice. Dozens. Hundreds. Calling out our names. Accusing us. Taunting us. Miller fired his rifle blindly, the muzzle flash lighting the snow in brief bursts. The figures recoiled, then advanced again. We ran. Through the trees, through the snow, through the fog. Screaming. Breath visible, hearts hammering. Knowing that each second, each step, brought the forest closer. And whatever was inside it, closer. And as we reached the next clearing, I realized the worst part. The missing platoon wasn't gone. They were waiting. And now, we were being added to the list. We kept moving, trying to put as much distance as possible between ourselves and the first dead body. The forest seemed endless. Every tree looked the same. Every shadow moved just slightly differently than the last. Hayes pulled out the map. It was supposed to show the forest paths and the last known location of the missing platoon. At first glance, it looked normal. Trenches marked here. Streams, clearings, bunkers, everything lined up. But as we walked, something strange happened. Paths that were clearly marked on the map didn't exist. Clearings vanished as we approached them. The stream we were supposed to cross wasn't there. And the bunkers? They appeared and disappeared, as if the forest itself was rearranging the world around us. Lewis stopped abruptly. "Guys, the map, it changed," he whispered. "The paths, they're wrong." We all looked. What he meant became immediately clear. Every time we paused, the map seemed to shift slightly. The ink lines twisting, bending, forming new paths. Paths that led deeper into the blackest parts of the forest. Miller growled, "No, no, no, no! This isn't possible!" But it was. We had been following one path for hours, only to find ourselves back at the same clearing with the trench from before. The screaming trenches. Hayes slammed the map down in frustration. Every time we think we're moving forward, we're going in circles. This forest, it's alive. It's changing around us. It doesn't want us to leave. Then the fog rolled in again, thick, cold, whispering like dozens of mouths. And from the fog, footsteps, slow, measured, coming from behind. We spun around. Nothing. But the map in Hayes's hand, it wasn't the same anymore. Where the trench had been, a bunker now appeared. Where the bunker had been, nothing. We realized something horrifying. The forest wasn't just alive. It was intelligent. It wasn't just hiding the missing platoon. It was manipulating the world itself. Every step we took, every turn we made, was under its control. Lewis whispered, "We're trapped." I wanted to argue. I wanted to say we'd find a way out. But deep down, I knew he was right. We were walking in a forest that was bigger on the inside than it appeared on the map. A forest that could reshape itself at will. And with every reshaping, it brought us closer to the missing platoon, or whatever was left of them. Hayes finally said it. The words chilled me to the bone. Listen carefully. This forest doesn't follow the rules of men. It follows its own, and it's been playing with them. And now, with us. By the time night fell, the forest had changed again. The clearing we thought was safe during the day was gone. In its place was a narrow path, barely wide enough for two men to walk side by side. The fog was thicker than ever, cold, silent, except for the occasional snapping of twigs, far too loud in the dead air. We set up a small perimeter, but none of us wanted to stay still. Every minute felt like an eternity. The forest seemed to watch us, its shadows stretching unnaturally long, crawling toward us with each passing second. As darkness engulfed us, we heard them. A faint dragging sound, not footsteps, not running, dragging, scraping, coming from deeper inside the trees. Miller whispered, "Stay down, don't move." We froze. Every soldier strained to hear, rifles shaking in their hands. Then a scream pierced the night. Not human, not normal. A scream that started in one direction, then echoed from every angle at once. We all jumped, rifles raised, scanning the darkness. Through the fog, figures emerged. Uniformed soldiers, but not alive. Their faces rotted, eyes hollow. Mouths stretched in silent screams. Some crawling, some sliding, some floating just above the ground. Hayes whispered, "It's them. The missing platoon." But they weren't the same soldiers we knew. Something had consumed them, changed them, turned them into something else. The dragging sound grew louder, and then the whispers returned. Calling our names, telling us to join, telling us it would be easier if we just let go. Lewis stuttered. We have to move. We can't stay here." We ran, through the fog, through the twisted trees, branches tearing at our clothes, roots tripping us, the shapes following, never slowing, never stopping. And then, the worst part. From the fog, dozens of shadows began sliding along the ground toward us. No feet, no legs, just darkness, swirling, moving, alive. The whispers turned into laughter, a high-pitched mocking sound, emanating from all directions at once. Miller shouted, "Together, don't split!" We kept running blindly, hoping to reach another clearing. Every step felt like we were moving in circles. The forest, it was testing us, bending paths, reshaping itself, keeping us exactly where it wanted. And then, just before we collapsed from exhaustion, a glimmer of light, a small clearing, safe, maybe, or another trap. We stumbled in, breathing hard, hearts pounding. We dared a glance back. The forest was silent again. But in the shadows at the edges, the figures of the missing platoon waited, watching, patient, hungry. And we knew. Night had only just begun. The small clearing gave us a brief sense of relief, but we all knew better. No part of this forest offered safety, not for soldiers, not for men, not for anyone. Hayes spotted something partially buried in the snow near a fallen tree. He crouched down and pulled it free. A radio, old battered WWII era, dust-covered and dented, the kind used to transmit messages between battalions in the thick of war. But what shocked us most wasn't the radio's appearance. It was that it was on. The static hissed through the speaker. A soft, trembling voice came through. "Is anyone there? Please, help! We're trapped. It's coming. Please, Someone, help! It was a soldier. Weak, desperate, terrified. But the way the voice carried, it was wrong. Too flat, repetitive, like a recording being looped over and over. Lewis whispered, That can't be real. That radio hasn't worked in decades. But then the voice changed. Became deeper, layered, multiple voices speaking at once. They all belong to us. And now, you do too. The static hissed, louder and louder. A low hum began vibrating through the snow, through the clearing, through our bones. I looked at the others. Their faces pale, eyes wide, realizing the forest wasn't just alive, it was aware. Aware of us. The voice continued, chanting our names. Private Lewis? Sergeant Miller. Hayes. You can't escape. Hayes slammed the radio down, but it kept speaking, repeating, echoing through the trees. The snow around us began to stir as if invisible hands were pushing it. Then the whispering started. Not from the radio this time, from all directions. The fog returned, curling around our boots. And in the fog, the shapes, the missing platoon. They emerged silently from the shadows, eyes hollow, jaws open, hands outstretched. The radio blared one final warning. Turn back. Everyone is already dead. Before we could react, the shapes surged forward, and we ran, deeper into the forest. The static followed us. The chanting followed us. And I realized, with every frantic step, that the forest wasn't done with us. It had marked us, and it would not let go.